The Stitchwraith is a mysterious figure, wearing Phineas Taggart's black trench coat. It wears a white mask, later revealed to be the head from the Simon doll, and the mask's features are drawn on in thick black marker. 2 eyes, one of which is blackened, a toothy grin with a missing tooth, and something that appears to be stuck within its front teeth. It also appears to have blood around its mouth, but it's actually apparently supposed to be pizza sauce. Yeah, I doubt it. The rest of its body is an endoskeleton of unknown origin, and in its chest lies Fetch's battery, which was glowing red when it killed its creator. The Stitchwraith is the epicenter of the fazbear Frights epilogues, and very little is known about him. And with little information comes a lot of speculation, and those theories are what we're exploring today. Greetings gamers and welcome back to Top 10 Gaming. I'm Connor Munro and this is the Top 10 Scary FNAF Stitchwraith Theories. Let's do it. And at 10, blank. Pointed out by Matt Patton of Fazbear Frights Theory video, the description of the Stitchwraith given to us by the Fazbear Frights epilogues seems to resemble the character of Blank from the Five Nights at Candy series of fan games. And now with the Fazbear Fanverse initiative being confirmed and giving us another Five Nights at Candy's game, some fans think that this was actually meant to be intentional. Five Nights at Candy's is pretty much the centerpiece of the Fazbear Fanverse initiative, being the most popular and probably the best made game series in the group. So some believe that Scott either had the fanverse in mind prior to its announcement last year, or that the fanverse was a way of explaining the Stitchwraith's appearance as a way to introduce the fan games into the main series, or as like a little Easter egg to show us that at least they have versions of the games in the main continuity. And at least until we get a full explanation, I'm still gonna believe that it's Blank, because that's cool. And at 9, Ennard. Or could the Stitchwraith be Ennard? Well, basically, this has been confirmed as false since it seems the Stitchwraith story takes place after the events of FNAF 6, where the rest of Ennard, now known as Molten Freddy, gets burned in the final fire, but perhaps the original intention was to have Ennard live on, as was implied by his minigame in FNAF VR. At the end of Ennard's vent repair, you activate a boiler that also causes something to scream. You assume that the thing screaming is Ennard, getting burned and turned into scrap. However, he jump scares you just moments after this scream. Was that seen to indicate that Ennard actually survived the fire like William did? Or was it just because we thought that we'd be safe after the scream, making that jump scare one of the most effective? Or is it because at the beginning, Ennard was going to play a bigger role than we suspected? And at 8, main villain. Could the Stitchwraith become the next main villain of the series once William finally kicks that remnant-filled bucket? Is it possible that this creature powered by the intense agony of multiple individuals will be the next mission we see our characters on, until we can finally put an end to this nightmare? Actually, it's unclear, since to my knowledge the character hasn't really been introduced into the game series, so if they were to become the new main villain it would come out of nowhere, unless they get introduced via security breach or make an appearance in the Fazbear Fanverse initiative game like FNAF Plus for example, which also seems plausible. Because while he may always come back, I feel like the William Afton storyline is kinda running a bit dry. Like sure, we love to hate this guy, but without something new and fresh, especially with a new owner being introduced soon enough, we will most likely have to leave FNAF in the past. So something new is bound to be incoming. Like if every Elder Scrolls game had like the Daedric Lord Dagon as the antagonist, we wouldn't really have cared when it came to Skyrim. It's the same idea here. And at 7, Golden Freddy. The Stitchwraith is also where the whole two souls theory started for Golden Freddy. Some believe that the Stitchwraith is a representation of Golden Freddy, and that the Stitchwraith's 2 souls mean that Golden Freddy has 2 souls. I mean, I don't know where that leap in logic came from, but it's widely accepted now despite there not really being much evidence for it, aside from circumstantial evidence that's built on other unconfirmed theories. But honestly though, that's most of the series at this point, having theories built off of other theories, but for some reason people never enjoy mine. Anyway, when it was revealed that the Stitchwraith was able to have 2 souls inside him after the man in room 1280, this led to the conclusion that this must have been the case with Golden Freddy. Evidence being the Stitchwraith, the survival logbook, and the 2-eye theory involving FNAF 3's bad ending, which I've already debunked. So yeah. And at 6, Afton Endo. Where did the Stitchwraith's endoskeleton come from? It's a question nobody quite has the answer to, but I have a pretty insane theory that I absolutely love the idea of. At this point, I am convinced that Michael Afton was a robot at the time of Sister Location and maybe even before that. He may not have been a rebuilt crying child, but he was certainly a robot. So, since this endoskeleton seems to be an older model from the way it's described, could this endoskeleton be the one that was inside Mike for the games we were playing as him? It would make a lot of sense. That endoskeleton would be full of agony at that point, after being scooped and dealing with literally everything else in the series, and sure, Mike supposedly burns in FNAF 6, but that doesn't mean that the endoskeleton was destroyed, that just means that his remnant was. So an endoskeleton that had recently been possessed by agony sounds like the absolute perfect base for an animatronic that revolves around shifting agony. And if the skeleton did survive, which let's be honest, it probably would, because I don't think a building catching on fire would be hot enough to melt the metal that was used for an endoskeleton, or at least an endoskeleton that was supposed to be for a human, and it already having agony inside it makes it seem like it would have an easier time accepting agony from other items later on. I'm just saying. It's probably not the case, but I mean, like, what a way to confirm that Mike was a robot, right? That would be cool. Halfway through, in at number 5, good guy? Could the Stitchwraith possibly be a good guy? This kind of switcheroo would definitely appear to be par for the course for FNAF, but having an animatronic we think is bad but actually be a hero might even be a little too far for FNAF. I mean, we've had good animatronics be revealed as evil before, that animatronic being Baby, but I mean, that's cause it's FNAF, of course they're gonna be bad. Could the Stitchwraith though really be good after all? To my knowledge, he's only killed Dr. Phineas Taggart, who was his creator, who was a man that was messing with life and death and was very similar to William Afton in that way, bringing life to things that shouldn't have it, so it would be understandable if this agony-fueled beast was thinking that he was helping by getting rid of another man like that. He also just seems to be collecting parts that have already met their demise instead of really offing them himself. He collects that girl's limbs after Baby had already removed them and to be beautiful. He collects the Psycho plush trap after it was destroyed by a train. I mean, like, maybe this guy isn't so bad after all. You gotta remember that the animatronics aren't really the bad guys here. They just want justice to be served to their killer, even if they have to do it themselves. And if we do play as Mike, he does look like his dad, who was their killer, so their actions in my book are justified. If I was killed by someone and then came back, I'd sure as hell want to kill the guy who killed me if I got the chance. So yeah, I understand the animatronics. I sympathize with them. In at 4, new books. Other fans believe, or I guess hope, that the introduction of the Stitchwraith will lead to the release of a new novel trilogy or series involving him as the main antagonist, which is something even I think is possible. The Stitchwraith was introduced into the series by books, and the character has remained in the Fazbear Frights series aside from a few theories placing him elsewhere, so unless the Stitchwraith shows up in Security Breach, it's entirely possible that the character will stay in the novels, with a new series or trilogy of maybe even exclusively graphic novels to keep the character alive. Because at this point, we don't really know this character's purpose or true intentions. They could secretly be a good guy for all we know, like I just mentioned. So maybe this new potential series of books would revolve around the Stitchwraith being a force for good, or at least the protagonist, because the protagonist doesn't always have to be a good guy. Take llittle for example. An incredibly messed up character is the protagonist of that book. But since he is the protagonist, you end up feeling sorry for him despite him being an absolutely awful human. That's also just because of the way it's written. It's like a literary thing. I couldn't read it, but I know someone who did. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, the arm. The arm in the final seconds of the Security Breach gameplay trailer is one of the most controversial moments in FNAF history. Some swear it's William Afton, others swear it's the Stitchwraith, since, like I've been saying, he hasn't yet been introduced into the games. I mean, this could be the perfect time to do so, since Afton's storyline could be on its last legs. But would that really make any sense? Earlier, I used the excuse of someone new taking over the IP as a reason to introduce a new villain, but the same could be said as a counter to that. If someone new comes in and changes the main antagonist of the IP, I'm sure plenty of people would riot. I'm even sure that some of you were thinking it or even commenting it after I suggested it. So could that arm really be the Stitchwraith? It's a possibility, but I find it highly unlikely, especially because of the purple light that you can see reflected off the arm, since that color is definitely associated with William rather than the Stitchwraith. And ultimately, in at number 2, Freddy and Friends. The recently released Freddy and Friends On Tour Episode 1 short on the Steel Wool Studios YouTube channel has some interesting moments to say the least. One of the most interesting being about 22 seconds in, when the screen glitches during a simple walking scene, revealing a face that could easily be described exactly like the Stitchwraith was in the epilogues. To quote the wiki, the mask features are drawn on in thick black marker. It has 2 eyes, one of which is blackened. It sports a toothy grin with a missing tooth, and something appears to be stuck between its front teeth. It also appears to have blood around its mouth, but it is actually meant to be pizza sauce. While one of the eyes may not be blacked out, it certainly looks like this could be the real face of the Stitchwraith, or at least how we would see it if it was in the real world, you know, like if it was actually realistic instead of a video game. And finally, in at number 1, William's vessel. What if everything is right though? What if the arm is the Stitchwraith's but it also is William's? What if all the eluding that we've been seeing is right? What if the robot William will inevitably possess is actually the Stitchwraith? In my breakdown for Freddy and Friends, I did mention that not even 1 second into the video we get a flash of purple. That combined with the seemingly random Stitchwraith screen in that video 20 seconds later seems to indicate to me that the two may be related, which would honestly make so much sense, and probably it's going to end up being the best of both worlds for people who want to see the Stitchwraith introduced and those who still want Afton to keep on kicking for a few more games. This entire thing seems like it could be building to that reveal, and that maybe William was the one who sent Phineas Taggart, the Stitchwraith's creator, on a mission to discover what agony really does and how to control it. Maybe William needs the agony of the Stitchwraith to help possess it and gain full control, since, you know, he's currently sentient code and we don't quite know how anything in the FNAF universe operates until it happens. Like those goddamn doors. There we have it, friends, the top 10 scary FNAF Stitchwraith theories. What theories do you believe, and do you have any of your own? Be sure you let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been and shall remain Connor Munro, and I'll see you in another video.